Of course, we remember the exploits of Johnny Anderson, one of the fine drivers at BCRA. We also have Ron Atkins. Ron is the son of Dick Atkins, who was a former BCRA champion and who was really, really a talented driver. So, Ron, are you here? Ron indicated he would be here, but don't see him hailing us down here. Of course, we have Tommy Stone Jr. Tommy over here, another great BCRA driver. We have Richard Boone, the father of Tom Bonet. I'm sorry, Richard. Tom Bonet, who drove midget lights initially, and then midgets. Listed on the list we have me, but that doesn't matter. Julian Castro. I was talking to Julian earlier. One of the really great BCRA hardtop drivers. Julian, where are you? It's good to have Julian with us here. And of course, Fred Erickson. Fred's here with his son, Fred Jr. Fred Erickson, who drove pre- and post-war midgets. I remember his famous little exploit on the quarter mile at the Oakland Speedway when a fellow named Edgar Elder put a wheel under him, and I as a young kid, went down there and paced off the marks on the asphalt, 112 feet, and I think it was about 100 stitches, wasn't it, Fred, in the neck? That was a pretty serious one. Ken Fox, former midget light official. Former BCRA champion, Tim Joyce. Tim, where are you? There's Tim. I'm talking to his buddy, Floyd Albus. Fred Lamont. Saw Fred earlier, car owner with BCRA. Fred. And of course, current official, Tom Manning. Tom? And probably one of the most well-dressed drivers in BCRA. And of course, that would be Victor Mencarini. Victor? Tell a little story. One BCRA awards banquet, I don't know, this must have been 20 years ago. Victor arrived with two lovely ladies on his arm in a leather tuxedo. Okay. And we have, of course, former car owner but long-time BCRA official and historian, Jimmy Montgomery. Jimmy? And one of our old-timers, 98 years young, Chick Listeri. Chick, where are you? There's Chick. Great to have you back. We have Mike Sala, who ran a car last night, but it was destroyed at Chico. And he's here, and of course his grandfather is an inductee member of the BCRA Hall of Fame. Well, we have listed as, we're supposed to be here, both Moros. Oop. Well, all of a sudden we have real sound. Bobby and Tommy, but I have seen neither of them. Are either of them here? Okay. Certainly we have Tom Motter. We spoke to Tom earlier down here with Vintage Images, and the author and publisher of some great motorsport publications. And of course, Tom and Virginia Palmer sitting right down here. Longtime officials with BCRA, and Virginia being the BCRA boss, you might say, for about 25 years. The office manager, the person that actually knew what was going on. We have the vulnerable Norm Rapp right up here. Norm Rapp Racing. Good to have you here, Norm. Howard Siger Jr. right down here. Howard. And of course, one of the finest starters ever in BCRA, and also did a lot of work with that other organization, USAC. And that, of course, is George Soule. George, all the way from Henderson, Nevada, to be here today. Thank you, George, and his lovely wife, Linda. Pete Storr, I think I saw Pete earlier. Former BCRA Midget Light champion and one of the founders of the Midget Light division. Microphone dimming down again. Okay, we have Dave Thurston. Dave. We have Chuck Webb. Saw Chuck here a couple times. We have today Bob Lawler. It's the son of Charlie Lawler. And of course, Bob Machin. Bob. One of the truly fine pioneers of BCRA midget racing. Came to the BCRA midgets by way of the Roaring Roadsters.
That's where he got the midget.
I would like to make mention too that we have Bill Sullivan here. Bill is the promotion department for Handy Racing, and I believe there are a number of Handy Racing officials here. Welcome to the BCRA Hall of Fame.
That was you there.
Barbecue. Also, Bill Sullivan is our track announcer, so those of us who go to the races later tonight will be listening to Bill Sullivan. And I have some not good news. Tommy Stone let me know that Hank Butcher, who is an inductee and former champion, has a tumor on his colon. Just got out of the hospital last night. Will be returning in 3 weeks for 6 months of chemotherapy. Sorry to hear that. Of course, little problem here. Whoop. Cutting in, cutting out. That's not the system, it's me. Of course, Tommy mentioned too that Butcher had one of his early careers was driving super modifieds for Tommy Stone, or for a Stone Senior in the early days. We also find that Wheeler Gresham is very ill. He does send his best wishes he was here, and wants to thank us all for so many great years. That's Wheeler Gresham. We do have the 3 vintage midgets down there. Number 1, the Paul Ferreira car. Number 11D, Harold Dickerson, and the 34X Paul Farragon. I'd also like to mention that we have 2 of our fine photographers here, Mark Sublett, a regular BCRA photographer, and local Jim Abreu, who shoots here at the Placerville Speedway on a regular basis. Well, now I would like to introduce the president of the Bay Cities Racing Association Board of Directors, Rick Holbrook.
Thank you, guys. Really nice to see all you people out here for the next Hall of Fame deal. Real quickly, I'd just like to really give a big thanks to all the board members for all the help that they did setting all this up and serving everyone, getting all the food prepared, and really a big thanks to Linda and Tom and their son. Without them, we couldn't have done this. And of course, Rick cooking everything. So, without any further ado, our board members, can you guys stand up? I know David Prickett right here is one of our midget guys. Behind me, Joe Lindsay, our treasurer. Paul Ferreira is around here somewhere. I don't know where he's at. Lonnie Lopez over there. Bob Rosa in the back waving at me so I don't forget him. He's our secretary. Anyone else I'm missing out there?
Rick Soto. Rick Soto.
Rick Soto. Sorry about that, Rick. I know. Anyways, again, thank you guys. Thanks, Tom and Linda. Everybody.
Oh my goodness. Hello.
Again, thank you guys all for showing up. Especially for the new inductees. Without further ado, Floyd up.
Thank you, Rick. Look, now it's back again. On again, off again. Well, now it's time to start the induction for the year 2010 for the Bay Cities Racing Association Hall of Fame. And I will bring those that are here or have a representative here up, and and this is in no particular order. The first gentleman, we're unfortunately unable to find anybody to represent him, family and so on, and that is Buck Whitmer, who was a midget driver. In 1945, he was 20th in points and had one win. 46, he was 10th and had a win at the Vallejo Speedway, driving the famed George Bignati Ford V8 60. 1947, he was 22nd, and in 1948, he only ran a portion of the season, coming in 108th out of 131 drivers. Now, there is nobody to accept for him, so we will do our best to find a recipient and forward his plaque for his induction into the Hall of Fame. Well, the next driver is one of the top midget light drivers. I want to call up on Scott Clark. In 1997, he ran, but he had no points, and he ran 98 to 2002. In 2003, he was second in points with 3 wins, and he won as a car owner. He led the points into August of that year, but was beaten out at the very end by Scott Kenny. In 2004, he was also second in points with 2 wins, also again winning the car championship. He also helped Bay Cities greatly by writing a very nice midget light report column for the BCRA newsletter for several years. And so it is with delight that Scott Clark is inducted into the BCRA Hall of Fame. Welcome, Scott. Well, the next recipient, unfortunately, is unable to be here today. It was only a few months ago that Ken Moleka left us. He was called, in many circles, the world's fastest heart transplant, having had 3 heart transplants during his racing career. He began in 1970. Well, he began actually in the super modifieds, but midget-wise, in 1971, he only drove a very little bit, was 73rd. 72, he was 37th, as car owner, 45th. In 1976, he moved up to 9th with 2 wins. His car came in 8th, and his wins came at the famous Tully Road San Jose Speedway. He ran only a little bit in 1977 to 1979, and then retired in 1980 through 1990, during which time he had his heart problems and his first He came back to run in 1991, a very limited schedule, coming in 53rd. In 92, he stepped it up a bit, got 19th. It was 19th as car owner, but there was a new car owner listed. That was Janet Moleka. Janet Moleka became the car owner of record. 1993 to 94, he ran 44th and 21st with the car. Then again, he took time off for his second transplant. In fact, he was getting ready to run right here at Placerville. He was on the list for the heart and got a call, come to the hospital. And he was down working on the car, getting it ready. So he didn't make Placerville that night, but instead received his second heart transplant. He came back in 95. He was 7th as a driver. The car was 4th. 96, he was 4th as a driver. 9th in the cars. In 1997, 8th, car getting 13th. In 1998, he ran very little because he went in for his 3rd heart transplant. And a year later for a kidney transplant. So he came back in 2000 as the world's fastest heart transplant and got 3rd in the points with 2 cars, a dirt car and a pavement car. They came in 12th and 13th. 2001, he was 10th in points with a car coming in 15th and 4th. And 2002, his last year to run with us, he was 6th in points. His cars were 13th and 20th. We're very pleased today to have represent Moleka, of course, his lovely wife, Janet. Janet, could you please come up and accept the induction into the BCRA Hall of Fame for your late husband, Ken Moleka.
Thank you. I had the privilege of being Ken Moleka's car owner and his wife for 24 years. He was the man who lived by the panel on his car that said, Mark 9:23, the Bible verse that says, with God all things are possible. When we came back racing, we learned a lot of things. Ken relearned some of them, and I learned them for the first time. Dirt is dirty. Whoops, here we go again. One, dirt is dirty, especially Placerville. If you borrow a muffler after wrecking yours on the first of a 2-day show, you're buying 2. And if you're pulling into the pits at Petaluma on opening day and everybody's jumping up and down, everyone's jumping up and down screaming, they're not happy to see you, your trailer's on fire. Now, I know Joe wants to say a few words.
I just wanted to say that I grew up with, my dad raised me, grew up at the track, literally. So,
Hold on, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? So, some of you may have recognized me from when I was like 5 years old. But the point is, I just wanted to say that he first 7 years he raced. He started racing in 1965, I believe, 66. He was racing super modifieds out at San Jose Speedway, the Tully Road one. And he never really, as soon as he got in a midget, he said he just knew that was for him. He was much more fun, and he just loved everybody he raced with. So, thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Dan. Well, we move into the hardtop division, hardtop owner. And unfortunately, the records in BCRA on the hardtop division are far and few between. So we don't have as much information as we'd like on Lou Bernardoni. For nearly 20 years he raced. He was known as the Frisco Rambler. From 49 to 51, actually is listed as a midget owner. 52 listed as a midget owner and placed 54th as a driver. In 1953, he was listed as a midget owner and placed 49th as a driver. Then he ran hardtops from the early 50s until 1959. He also ran NASCAR late model stock cars in the late 50s and early 60s. He was the owner of Dollar Motors in San Francisco, which was the city's oldest independent car dealership. Well, we're very happy that his son Pete is here today to accept the induction of Lou Bernardoni into the BCRA Hall of Fame. Thank you, Pete. In the midget light division, this is a midget light car owner, and that is for Suds Sutherland. In 1994, in the BCRA midget light division, he placed second in points with 2 wins, and Cameron Beard was his chauffeur. In 1995, he placed 6th. In 1996, 18th. He was a midget owner actually back in 1963, 64, and also in 1971. Here today to accept the induction into the Hall of Fame for Sutherland, Cameron Beard. Cameron? There's the man, the famous Beard Racing fraternity.
I just want you to know Suds was an old school racer. He was fun to race with. I met him at Delta Speedway one night, and I saw this old guy wrenching on his car, and I looked over at him and said, you know what, let me drive for you, and I'll wrench on your damn car. And he put me in the car. And from then on, we raced, and we had a blast, and he was really good to drive for, and it was just fun to run with him. He's sorely missed.
Thank you, Cameron. Whoop. Well, the next induction into the Hall of Fame is a driver who's still very active. And glad to see him here today. And of course, I'm talking about Jimmy Sills. In 1981, he had one win at Baylands, came in 42nd. Well, that's indicative of Jimmy. Jimmy never ran a season with the idea of winning a championship. He would move around and run with different organizations, different style cars. He was a driver that wanted to drive what he wanted to drive, and he had a lot of fun doing it, a lot of success. In '83, he was 11th with Bay Cities with one win at Bayland. In 1984, his 15th with 4 wins at Baylands, driving the Jim Wellington VW. In 1985, his 24th, 1 win, that at Petaluma. 86, 42nd, 1 win, Baylands in the Wellington car, this time a V4. In 1989, he was 9th. He had 3 wins, Antioch, Placerville, and Grass Valley. In 1990, he was 20th with 2 wins, Petaluma and Hanford, then moving into the Bob Consani Pontiac, and of course, Bob was inducted into the Hall of Fame. In 1991, 19th with 2 wins, Madera and Petaluma. In 1995 and 96, he had 1 win at Chico. To this day, he still runs. In fact, I wasn't at Chico last night, but I understand you flipped a midget, then you flipped a sprint car. Now, I have a racing school that I could recommend to you. And of course, he has the Jimmy Sills School of Open Wheel Racing at the track in Marysville, where he does a great job. Now, as I mentioned, his exploits were far beyond just BCRA, a lot of USAC stuff, which included 3 Silver Crown championships, 1990, 1994, and 1996. And numerous midget, I asked Jimmy, how many USAC midget race wins you have? He has no idea, he can't count that high. He's a race driver, he can't count that high. So, anyway, it's with great pleasure that we induct Jimmy Sills into the BCRA Hall of Fame. But at this time, I'd also like to call on Dave and Wendy Thurston to come up for a special award. They're hiding back here. I don't know if anybody here ever had the fun of running with Jimmy in the 2-place sprint car, the 2-man sprint car with a seat and back in tandem. And I did that at Chico one night, and I jumped in the back, and I was too big. They couldn't put the steering wheel back in. Of course, it was a fake steering wheel anyway. Jimmy was doing the driving, and we go flying down the front straightaway into the first turn, and really high, Chico with no crash walls. All of a sudden, he decelerates and limps back to the pits, and I didn't know, boy, that was a short ride. He had blown the right rear tire, and here it was right next to me, and I didn't even know it. And he said, stay in the car, Floyd, stay in the car, and they changed, they had a tire and wheel ready to go, and back out on the track, and that was a thrill. Not being, being a would-be race driver myself was a thrill to have a really, really fine driver take me around the track in that car to where when you're looking basically straight ahead, you're looking at the apex of the turn. So he crossed it up pretty good.
Yeah, these are some plaques that Tim Grant did. It was very nice work. He thought this would be really nice. Jimmy really like it, and this would be a good time to give it to him. Tim had to fly back to the Midwest to watch Justin race, so he says, I get to present him. So,
Oh, thank you very much. Those are nice, and Tim Grant does great work. If anybody needs any printing, he's the guy to see. And I've had a great racing career, you know, and a big part of it is people like the Thurstons that give you the opportunity to drive cars like these and cars that are capable of winning, and you know, Bob Consani and further back Jim Wellington, and I even drove Lenny Gonsal's car one time, and it was kind of a funny night because when I drove it, Lenny's motors weren't living very long, and they were Volkswagens, and Volkswagens didn't have a very long history after you bolted them into the car. So we're leading the race at Baylands, and I'm thinking, well, you know what? I think this thing is going to last, and come around the fourth turn, and I saw the light flash twice to tell the flagman that there was one lap to go, and I think, all right, I think we're going to make it. And just about the time I get to the flagman, it blows the whole case off the side of it, and so it throws the oil out on the headers, and it catches fire. But the opening is right there for the pits, so I just drove out to the pits. I figured that oil fire would be out by the time I got to Lenny's pit. It was over off of turn 2, and went over there and came to a stop and got out of the car, and the poor fireman who was in the infield in the middle of 1 and 2 saw this ball of flame going out of turn 1, and he grabbed that fire extinguisher and he carried it all the way out of turn 1 and all the way around to turn 2. And he was so out of breath, and then the fire was out, he didn't get to squirt the fire extinguisher. So, but yeah, it's been a great career, and BCRA's always been fun to race with, and it's always great. And I've raced BCRA with all different officials and organizers, and it's all been fun. So hopefully we'll continue that fun and keep it on the wheels tonight.
Thank you, Jimmy Sills. A photo op here. Well, I'll begin with our next inductee. We go back in a midget owner quite a ways back in the history of BCRA. And our 92-year young John Radich, who's here with us tonight. We're just so glad that he is. John started driving training races before World War II. Of course, during World War II, there was no racing. And the story has it that after the war, he was in a race as a race driver at the Vallejo ballpark, and he put a hole in the fence, and his wife looked on that a bit skeptically, and that pretty well ended his driving career. From that point on, he became a car owner. In 1945, running an Alto outboard, and in 1946, he was the owner. Now, since then, in 1980, he built a group of Alto-powered vintage midgets from the ground up. In other words, they weren't restored old midgets, but he built new midgets to the old specs so that they were just like a car from the 30s or early 40s. In 1980, he did that. Then 1987-88, he had a vintage midget, which was an Alto-powered railer with BCRA. During his span of motorsports, he had a total of 15 cars. And those cars now are spread out, most of them is vintage, throughout the California and the Northwest, and one of them even in Australia. So it is with great pleasure that we induct John Radich into the BCRA Hall of Fame. John?
to have my name on this. With guys like Jimmy Sills, I'm sure that some of the drivers from way back that I've known and hoped that I could be like. But here I am, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Moving back to the hardtop division. This was a hardtop driver, and again, I need to apologize that the stats on the hardtop division are basically non-existent. The inductee is Rod Zanelini, and he ran with BCRA, we believe, from 1950 to 1964. He was the Redwood Empire and the Santa Rosa champion. Now, we do have a stat. In 1964, which was the last year he ran, he was second in points and had 7 wins. Well, that tells me in the years leading up to that, he certainly had a lot of other wins and placed really, really high in the points, I'm sure. I can remember as a young man watching Rod Zanelini run, and he was one of the really fine BCRA hardtop drivers. Yeah, I'm afraid that we do not have anybody here representing Rod Zanelini, and, except if somebody did show up that we're unaware of. So we will hold the plaque, and the office will continue to try to make inroads to find a relative or representative of the Zanelini family. So induction into the BCRA Hall of Fame, Rod Zanelini. Our next inductee is listed as an official. That indeed he was, but he was much more. That's Frank Blado, the jack of all trades. He drove roadsters after being discharged from the Navy following World War II. And in 1953 to 1954, he drove in the midget division. Then he became an official also in the 1950s at the Oakland indoor races and with the BCRA hardtops. He was a track prep. He became a track prep expert and did the track preparation for the old Contra Costa Speedway for a great deal of time and for the Vallejo Speedway. I remember when he was there at the Vallejo Speedway, going to his home in Pleasant Hill about some business, and in his garage he had a workshop, and he made the trophies for Vallejo Speedway and for the old ARA and so on. And you know, you had that smell of a working wood shop, which is a wonderful, wonderful smell. And he would buy, you know, the metal parts, the plastic parts, but he did all of the wood working himself, doing the machining and the cutting and the finish work on it. So he was a trophy manufacturer, one of his many things. I was talking to his good friend Bob Silva, who really wanted to be here today, but had an obligation with the family that he just couldn't get out of, and Bob would have accepted on Frank's behalf. But Bob tells me that he and Frank at one point went into, in the early 60s, went to the restaurant and bar business, and they bought a bar and restaurant called 7 Mile House. Not sure exactly where it was, but that again was one of the many aspects of Frank Blado, who is being inducted into the BCRA Hall of Fame as an official, and we're very happy to have Tom Motter accept the award on behalf of Frank Blado. Tom?
On behalf of Frank Blado, Bob Silva says thank you very much. He's really sorry he couldn't be here. If I might just take a moment, a word about some of the inductees that you're beginning to see in the past few years and in future years that are not as familiar as some of the names normally are. One of the things that the BCRA Hall of Fame tries to do, one of its mission statements is, in fact, to give honor to those people, whatever their voices may have been within BCRA that had something to do with the success of BCRA over the years. They weren't necessarily the top hot dog drivers or the top car owners. They were the officials that usually had no names. They were the guys that were the also-rans. They were the guys that filled the backfields at races. And it's true today, if you don't have them, you're not going to have a very successful race. Many of the people are now old, even older than I am. And their names are long forgotten. And you don't really know how much it's appreciated when they finally find out that someone remembered them and somebody cares. So keep it up, BCRA. You're doing a great job. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Well, our next inductee is also an official, and here again, one of the three being inducted today for which we do not have a family member or representative. We will certainly still try to find such a person. And that, of course, is Stan Dean, an official. He began with the Roadsters and the BCRA Hardtops. From 1956 to 65, he was a hardtop scorer. Stan Dean, inducted into the BCRA Hall of Fame 2010. Stan Dean.
I got about 20 minutes of video left.
Well, we come to the final inductee today. As I say, these were done at random, not in any particular order. So he's last, but as the old adage says, certainly not least, because he's one of the finest midget light drivers who ever set foot in a midget light. And of course, I'm speaking of Greg Dennett. Greg began in 1999. In 2000, he was third as a driver. And the car was third, and that was owned by his dad, who is also a member of the BCRA Hall of Fame, Gary Dennett, which it became 3D Motorsports. In 2001, he won the championship with 6 wins. The car also won the Car Owner Championship. 2002 repeated that, winning the championship, and his brother Todd came in second in the championship, and the cars came in first and second in the Car Owner Championship. He had 1 win that year. In 2003, the final year of a midget light competition, he was 5th in the points with 5 wins, 4th as a car owner. Following that, he also, at various stages, ran a midget. He didn't compete on the entire circuit, but he ran a midget. When he did a pretty good job. But I also remember one night right here coming out of turn 4, getting up almost as high as that high cyclone fence. You remember that?
I just wanted to say that it's a great honor to be recognized today. I grew up in a racing family, and my dad was my biggest supporter, and you know, if we weren't racing, we weren't doing anything. He loved racing, and you know, I followed his footsteps, and it was great to have him as my car owner, and we were able to enjoy you know, good times together through racing. I want to thank BCRA for all the great memories. We raced for over 14 years through different organizations, and BCRA was just a great place to race with easygoing, great competition, and kind of like a family atmosphere. So it made it fun to come to the track, and we made a lot of great friends. And you know, to this day, people that when we show up after 4 years of not being at a race, I can go up to people, talk to them, say hi, and we all have good respect for each other. I really just have to thank my parents, who really gave me the opportunity to live out my dream of racing. I always wanted to be the best, and they gave me the best equipment that money could buy at that time, and really gave me every opportunity to really make a name for myself. and I can't thank them enough for what they've done. My wife, who supported me for 14 years of racing. After we had our first kid, it was my pit guy Larry. He would, when we were racing midgets, he would be working on the car, and I would try to help him. But Tanya would always yell at me to come in and help with the baby, and I knew that was probably the start of the end, because I knew that a family was at that time was going to be more important, and that's where we're at now, to where, you know, my kids and my family is what's really important to me right now, and we're enjoying every bit of them. But it's just great to be here and to be honored, and I just want to thank you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Well, that brings to a conclusion the induction part of our ceremonies. I believe we'll probably be moving on to a raffle here pretty soon. Joe, how are we doing on the raffle? Are there any additional tickets that need to be purchased? Okay, yell, otherwise we're going to start. Oh, we got somebody there who wants tickets. Okay, you need to get up here. We apparently have some full tri-tips remaining, which is par for the course here. We always